Today we're exploring the opening and closing of the grave space. A lot of times this is referred to as the opening and closing, or digging the grave, or opening the space. The opening and closing of the grave could be done in order to prepare the receiving of either an urn or a casket. Opening the grave can be done either to the single depth, which is built for one person to be placed in their casket in their space, or be placed double depth, awaiting for the second person, usually a spouse or significant other, to be placed atop them at a later date. Single depth burials usually get placed at 6 to 7 feet at the bottom of the space, and double depth is usually 8 to 9 feet in depth. A lot of people misunderstand all that goes into it. At the very beginning of this process, it does require several people to double check that the space is valid, owned by the family, and triple check to make sure that it is the correct space prior to setting out the needs to dig. From that point, the space by the grounds crew is marked out, and then the sod is removed from the top of the space and set to the side. That's a means of being able to use that to replace it when the time comes that the grave has been tamped and closed properly. Once the grass has been removed from the top, the grave digger is the one that's able to use the backhoe to be able to dig the grave space. In most cemeteries, these are traditionally 40 inches wide, and the length vary based on the cemetery and location. They could be 7, 8, or 9 feet long depending on the needs and the space surrounding them. As the gravedigger digs into the space with the backhoe, he has to be able to not only create a space that's going to be the exact measurement and dimension necessary, he also manages the space as he digs. So finding tree roots, or in the case of Arizona, the dirt below the soft top soil is hard and difficult to go through. As the gravedigger continues to open the space, he finally reaches that bottom depth, 6 to 7 feet. Depending on the vault that will be placed in the space, the bottom of the space is either mounded up in preparation for a vault to be placed on top, or it's flattened out depending, again, on the vault that's used. Once the grave space has been opened, those next steps are going to include setting up the vault by either placing at the bottom of the space in preparation to receive the casket, or set to hover above the space to be able to receive the casket, be sealed closed, and then lowered to the space. Once the grave is open and prepared, services take place. The casket is then either lowered or sealed within the vault and then lowered. Once that's complete, we begin to close the grave. This process is a means of taking excess dirt and filling in the space, where we then go through a process known as tamping, where the space is then leveled and prepared to receive the sod and the headstone once again. The entirety of the closing of the space generally takes 2 to 3 days. A large reason for the time delay is due to the need to allow the ground time to settle. Once everything's been complete, the sod has been replaced, the headstone back where it belongs, everything begins to grow back into place, and then it looks as though nothing had taken place there before. As you can see, opening and closing of a grave space is more than just digging a hole. There is a lot of people and a lot of preparation and a lot of labor to be able to take care of your loved one and have them placed in their final resting place.